Hello. I've been a little bit annoyed because my videos, I've made two videos in the last like a week or two. No, in the last week that were really actually quite important to me or that I really liked, I felt really good about, and none of the audio saved on them. I was so mad. I was actually really proud of them, really excited to come home and post them, and then they had no sound, so that's a bit annoying. So I'll have to update you on the last few bit of things I did. I've had a lot of like videos recently that haven't gotten like hours of work that just haven't gotten posted for one reason or another. One of them I was just too lazy. I was like it was like 7+ hours of work. I'm like I don't feel like it. But oh, I feel a little bit of like upset right now. Weirdly, I was waiting to for Teams to load, and then I went on YouTube, and then I saw a video about Megan the Stallion, and then like her case and everything, and I'm gonna link it below in case anybody's interested. And it was just talking about how she was, yeah, I don't know, how she was speaking out, how there was countless evidence against the person who shot her, and yet people were like just going on this extensive campaign to discredit her, and people were sort of started to celebrate the person who shot her, even though there was very, I mean, he admitted to it apparently the next day. And I think God, like it actually, when I saw that she got her case, like her case went through and the man who shot her actually went to prison, I was like, thank you, Lord. God is real. God is looking out for somebody at least. I was like, thank you. That gave me inspiration. But here we go. We're gonna visualize before we get into this video. Let's visualize it together. I finished. I finished this research. I put it out. Okay, let's think, let's reflect. 5 years later, all of us, let's visualize together. Somebody got sexually abused, sadly. They're in trial. They have an expert witness come in. This person, they brought their abuser to court. The expert witness brings in my research, and because of that, this person is able to get their abuser into prison. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. We get so many stupid trends. We get Labubus. We get what else? Stanley Cup accessories. We've gotten rapture talk. We've gotten all these stupid trends. I want to see a new trend. I'm manifesting it. I'm visualizing it. I'm speaking into existence. The new trend is people getting their abusers tried and imprisoned. That's my trend that I've actually manifested. I'm speaking it into existence right now. New trend in 2020, whatever, is men getting, or women who have sexually abused people, but I'm thinking men because the men usually get away with it. We have a new trend coming, and that is abusers actually going to prison. Let's see it. Let's do it. Anyways, okay, let's look at what I've been working on in the last few days. What I did in the last video that didn't get saved, essentially, is I did extensive amounts of learning about the trisynaptic circuit. Just some self-learning. I did a little bit of I watched YouTube videos. I used a bit of ChatGPT to teach me. I'll show you my last ChatGPT conversation. And then I asked a really important question which will make sense. I'm going to explain it to you. These drawings seem really out of place or random, but I was thinking about, okay, so in the way that basically, I'm going to read you what I actually wrote. Basically, the question that I had was that, so in the study that I was reading, that I'm basing a lot of my computational model off of by Junk, I think is how you say it, Junk et al. It's like a unified model of something sharp wave ripples that I've mentioned like 1,000 times in the series. They actually did have sharp wave ripple replay. So the ripples rippled, and then they were able to see the information that replayed. So they were able to see like where the rats were on an imaginary line, essentially. Okay. So I was thinking, so they were able to get these readouts, but from play cell activity. But I was like, play cells are only one thing. Play cells are only going to give you one piece of information, which is where the rat has been. And we learned some really important information. Wait, you know what? Let's pull up the ChatGPT. I learned some really important information um, last video, and it really elevated my project a lot. Not last video, meaning the one that got deleted. Ooh, let's make rapists afraid. Actually, that's my goal. I will be so happy. I want all abusers to be afraid. I want them to feel scared that they're not going to get away with things anymore, and I want them to move through the world with that sort of anxiety. That's my goal. right now they feel empowered and happy, I feel like a lot of the time, because they know we encourage them in society, but let's create a new trend of making abusers afraid. I saw recently that Elon Musk's dad actually was discovered that he had abused multiple children in his life. Yeah, all these people. Okay, so I asked some questions about place cells and how they work and everything, how they encode. And basically what I learned is that what happens is that during the exploration phase, the rats are encoding. So they are sort of recording everything that happens. That pattern is saved in the CA3 to CA1 area. And then when it's time for the memories to consolidate, they replay again in the same exact order, which is what I learned. So does this mean the patterns played again in the same order? And it said yes, that it did play again in the same order. And that's how the rats were able to know when they were somewhere. So what I said in my last video is that I think I've been having trouble with the last piece because I didn't know at all like what is it supposed to look like at the end. I'm actually going to take a break to stop being mad because I still feel really upset. So I feel like I'm not explaining this well. BRB. Okay, while we're waiting for my tea, let me tell you exactly how I envision it. If you're somebody watching and you've been thinking, I really want to take my abuser to court one day, don't take my word for it yet. But if you're watching this because my project was done and it worked and all this stuff, let me tell you exactly how I imagine it going in a court setting, how it could go based on my science, okay? You present like this. You bring your story to court. Okay, say, okay, if you have a recovered memory, okay, I recovered memories later in life. Now here's what you can do. You can show that you have recorded sort of history of high arousal over a course of time, either through some kind of therapy notes, some kind of symptoms that you have recorded, medically, or maybe people in your life can attest to certain types of behaviors correlating with high arousal, and then you demonstrate that there was an actual sort of biological reason as to why you were not able to recover the memory until later, which is backed in science because we know now, because my science is done and I did it, that high acetylcholine essentially, or high arousal essentially leads to dissociative amnesia. And that's why you were not able to recover your memories until later in life. Now, people can't say, why did you remember later, stupid people? Now, those stupid people can go educate themselves on the thing they're actually supposed to be doing, dealing with trauma. And you actually have science now to demonstrate why it is that you recovered something late in life. Okay, I know a lot of people in my life who had who went through sexual abuse recovered their memories later, or didn't recover childhood sexual abuse memories until they were maybe in teens, or they went through a period of sexual abuse as a young adult and then weren't able to recover everything until maybe a few months later. So it's not crazy. It's scientific. I'm about to show it in my paper. It's going to be done. Okay. But that is how I imagine it in a court setting. I think that hopefully, if you can establish a recorded history of high arousal over a period of time through behaviors, through symptoms, through life experiences, you can demonstrate why you didn't recover those memories until later, you know? And while I'm at it, let's visualize it, whatever. Give me a few years, I'll become an acetylcholine expert. Let me watch me link it to some of these chronic illnesses that a lot of people develop after chronic stress, after abuse, and maybe you can throw that in. I had a chronic illness, I had chronic fatigue or something like that, which points to an constant release of acetylcholine after that I dealt with for a long period of time in my life. Because a lot of the people that I know that went through periods of sexual abuse or extended trauma also have a lot of chronic illnesses. And what else are we not putting our time and effort in, because it's a lot of complaining women? Chronic illnesses. Yeah, we're back. So basically, what I was thinking, so I was like, so place cells, they have to fire to get these patterns. Okay, okay, okay. So basically what I was thinking is that I was like, I think I'm having trouble figuring out how to finish this because I don't know what I'm looking for fragmentation wise. I don't know what my project should sort of be doing, or like what am I missing? What is it? What is my end goal? I really had no idea. But then I was learning this in my last video, and I was reading about how usually what happens is that the time like the timing the replay plays back in the same order, so then you know how the timing works. So that one of my first hypotheses that I sort of made in this next little thinking session was maybe if arousal impacts encoding, because I think that something that's higher arousal has, I think I read in my literature review in one of my texts that basically if something has a higher arousal, it usually gets encoded first or something like that. It changes up the order of how you encode something like that. I need to make sure that that's right. So one hypothesis is maybe things get coded, sort of replayed back incorrectly, or certain things replay but not other things, and then that changes, for example, your ability to put it together in the right timing. So that was one hypothesis. So instead of like okay, so like instead of going, okay, it encoded like this, A, B, C, D, and now it's consolidating as A, B, C, D. Maybe it encoded as A, B, C, D, but then consolidated as C, D, A, B, something like that. Okay, so that's one hypothesis. But then my other thing, this is my big thing from last time I was working, was that basically the place cells usually, so in this paper, which I'll show you now, a unified dynamic model for learning, replaying sharp wave ripples. I've been basing a lot of my neural network information on this because they've made a neural network of the same part of the brain essentially, or the same sort of circuit that I'm working with. So I've really been inspired by them. But I was thinking they did have that replay at the end. So basically everything that was encoded with these imaginary rats walking down an imaginary line, like when it consolidated, it replayed in the same order and everything, but they only had place cells. So the only thing that was getting consolidated was memory of information about where a rat was. The thing is that rats actually do bind memories. So they do have episodic memory, meaning they do have memories a little bit like that are a little bit more complex and feature a little bit more of like a narrative about the paper that I read said that the rats usually do that in a pattern that's like where, what, and source, essentially, or something along those lines, where, what, and when, or where, when, and source, something like that. So I basically, my question that I had, this is what I wrote last time. If so basically when the information replayed back in the neural network that I'm basing a lot of this off of, it just replayed with a readout sort of this, almost like the same neurons that fired. How, let's see, let me pull it back up. I think I just got a bit flustered by the task at hand, and I'm just not really speaking as well this time because by chance I saw that video before this, and then I was like, why? Like I'm really, it was just a little bit too on the nose that I was just like, ugh. But so I asked in another, like, this actually wasn't a video. Were they able to do it? So were they actually able to get that readout that they wanted about the stored information? And they were. And what happened is that basically, like I already explained, they had that exploration phase where these patterns were stored, and then the patterns sort of replayed again with that same information about the places in the same pattern. So basically, what was happening is they were sort of encoding these spike patterns, these patterns that were happening in the brain, I guess, in different neurons. Again, sorry, I'm a little bit, everything was explained so well in the video that got deleted because I was learning it like fresh. Like it was my first time sort of saying it out loud, so then it was really good. But unfortunately, right now I'm kind of in a bad mood. But my question was, if a memory is getting bound together because rats have memory binding too, what do those patterns look like? So instead of the pattern being just, okay, this is where they were, like the pattern would need to be a little bit more complex, right? Instead of just place cells, it would have to be multiple different things. Um, so my question is, so place cells is to place cell readout as bound memory is to bound memory readout, but how is the bound memory working? That is different than the place cells. So I actually asked ChatGPT that I'll show you what I said. Really quick though, it makes me happy. This project makes me happy because once it's out, it's out. Once it's done, it's done, you know? It's like you can't take it back. You can't suppress it. So, okay. So I asked place cells are one type of cell explaining one type of thing, so location. And then you also get time from the temporal sort of element of the replay. But rats do have episodic memory bound together in combinations like this, where, what, and source. So in the junk study, the patterns getting replayed again were just place, so just location on a line. But what would a bound memory entail? It wouldn't just be a place. What would those patterns look like? And so basically, it explained to me to create these multi-dimensional memories. It explained the different parts of the brain that I would need. So usually where would be the spatial info. So that would be something like hippocampal place cells, EC grid cells. I actually learned about EC grid cells for the same first. I actually learned about EC grid cells for the first time in that learning session. It was such a vibe. I'm actually sad. I was like, it was such a fun vibe. It was just me learning really cool stuff. But unfortunately, okay. But basically, yes, so they learn all of that in spatial info. Basically, they learn all that in these places. And that's basically that's where the Jong study stopped. Okay, that's where that unified model study stopped. They did this. They had the EC, the entorhinal cortex, which I learned about more last time, and then they had the hippocampal place cells as well. But what I needed, so what? So an object or event. I think that's my big one. That's my big one that I need because I'm using trauma. So often carried bilateral EC or pararhinal cortex to hippocampus. And then when, so that would be back to that same temporal encoding thing, so the same order. The only thing then that I have to add on top of what they have, so they already have like most of this in their study, but what I need to add is this what. So I need to add the pararhinal cortex. And I will already have an entorhinal cortex. So yeah. So everything else is already there. I just need to add this cortex essentially. And in my actual last video, the actual one that got saved, I showed that I had sort of my study had gotten a bit simplified, so I need to add all those pieces back in. So with that in mind, I'm basically so I guess these two things will be making memories together, and then they'll be replaying back in an order. But what might happen is that the arousal might impact the order that gets bound in, or something like that. We're gonna see. Um, so it explained to me. So in memory binding, if they were to save those memory binding patterns, instead of place cell sequence, you'd see multi-feature cell assemblies firing together. So that could be, for example, all together at the same time. CA1 place cell for location, CA1 neuron encoding object / event identity. So that's input from this. And the CA1 to EC neurons coding temporal context, which is going to include theta waves and time cells, which I'm going to learn more about now. I do need to learn more about time cells, but I don't think they had time cells in that other study that I used, but I don't know, I'm still going to read. So basically all of those cells are going to be firing together instead of just the location cells. And then basically bound memory isn't just a line of places, it's a pattern across multiple feature dimensions replayed together. So yeah, so here just had that little list of everything that I needed. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna jump in yet to doing that. I want to get as much information as I can, so I'm gonna read more. I have some videos that I had been really excited saved that were gonna be really useful. So we're just doing more self-learning today, I'll show. It's gonna be this. So I actually forgot that these YouTube videos existed. Weirdly enough, I think I've been using ChatGPT a lot for learning, but I forgot that there's so many really good YouTube videos about the subjects that I'm trying to learn that I actually jumped in at first using them, but then I ended up forgetting that they existed for some reason. But we're gonna jump back into these types of videos to do some learning. Last time I worked, I basically watched a lot of those videos. I basically just really expanded on the entire trisynaptic circuit, which I learned everything about, and that was actually really informative for me because I think I sometimes I think I'm in like this zone of learning where because I'm learning this myself, I forget that I don't really have the full context sometimes the way that I think that I do. So it was actually really useful because there were pieces I think I kept being like, for example, what is dentate gyru? I was like, I don't really, I think I just kept skipping over it and it didn't feel useful the way that it actually was. So, or didn't feel necessary. But now that I read about it, I understood it, like why, what part that it played and etc. I think I was just forgetting that I needed to do some more learning. So that was what I did last time, and you can see that all of this is really from watching YouTube videos. I'm gonna link videos below in case someone's really actually learning neuroscience or like interested or something, or just if you're curious to see what I was watching, I'm gonna link it below for other people. I learned about recurrent collaterals. I just learned a lot about this entire circuit, and I think that that was a really good use of my time. So today I'm gonna watch this long-term plasticity video. And this is the thing is that I actually read some papers already about STDP rules and things, but I think it'll be really good to learn that again from the context of actually learning a little bit more about plasticity. And there's words that I didn't really understand yet, and I forgot these videos existed. I was like kind of trying to find papers, and the papers are basically too much. But for example, back propagation, I was like, what is back propagation? And yeah, so I'm gonna learn all of that today and see where that takes me. On sort of like a real note, uh, I guess it's good that I'm like sort of discussing this in the videos because I guess obviously that's sort of like the big thing I'm tackling. It does get a bit like annoying. Sometimes I want to make my videos on a lighter note, and it's like it's hard because this is not a light topic. This is not a light reason that I'm doing this work, and it just feels like it sort of comes back up in the story of this project, which I mean, obviously, but I want to talk about some of the lighter parts, or I guess the ways that I've been sort of preparing myself to be sort of having diving into this as a career, or I think as I've gone through this project, I've been feeling more confident in the fact that this will be my career. This will be my career one day. It does I don't know the path there fully yet, but in my head it's like I'm already there, right? Obviously this has been like both triggering and healing at the same time. I've been doing a lot of healing alongside of this project because it was only a few years ago that I was still sort of trapped on campus with this abuser that was the villain origin story of all this, and I was really mentally ill and all of this stuff, and it's really just been what, like 3 years that I've been, like not even that, like 2 years out of school. And I will say that being in a new environment has made me feel so clear-headed and has I've just gotten so much better. But yeah, I think I've just been doing a lot of healing work alongside of this project, and it's been like I don't know. I mentioned this. I wanted to kind of tell the story, but I was speaking to some colleagues this week who obviously I have never really like talked about my trauma because we don't have that kind of relationship, and it's just kind of like random. And I don't like, it's just not something that I feel the need to mention, even though they're very nice people. They're all psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever, and they're my colleagues. So we were having a conversation the other day about sexual abuse actually, and I brought it up myself because I was mentioning a story about somebody in my life that was like related to something, and we ended up getting into a conversation about sexual abuse, and they were telling me some case studies. And you know, knowing that I want to have a career in this has been such a strong motivation for me to work through my own emotions, because I have like the sort of information, I have the drive to do this work that I think a lot of people pass over or are not really that interested in my field. And when we were talking about these stories, I think obviously the instant sort of reaction when you hear something that might be triggering is to want to sort of stop it. But actually, very intentionally the other day, I was like, I don't want to stop it. I've been reflecting a lot. Actually, I was reflecting that day on how I think that even though I've only been out of that environment for 2 years, like the actual trauma was maybe 6 years ago. And I think I've grown so much in my mental health journey. And obviously, I still struggle, but it's my mind is in a really different place and my life is in a really different place. And I think that I've gotten to the sort of point where obviously when you're starting out, it can be so important or useful to sort of avoid those triggers, or try to be like, I don't want to trigger myself, I'm not going to watch content that triggers me, or etc. But the unfortunate part, and I'm a huge advocate for like safe spaces, trigger warnings. I think it's just common courtesy to allow people to
sort of choose how they navigate the experience of interacting with triggering content. And you never know, some people might be really early in their experience, and I read plenty of case studies with people that were navigating content that they didn't their minds were not ready at all to cope with, and they got really suicidal or just whatever. So it's really important, I think, to give people that space. But having agency over my experience of trauma, as I have moved into this phase, I have I've accepted the fact that triggers are going to happen. I can't control everything. I can't control everything everyone's going to say. And naturally, as we move through the world, triggers are going to appear here or there. I had another one the other day. I went to see Materialist on my birthday with my sister, and it was really good. But I didn't know that there was going to be a sexual assault story in the middle of that. And I was like, it was like a little bit like, whoa. But I think I've just really been reflecting on the fact that I can't, like, the triggers are gonna naturally emerge as I move through my life. And as my coworkers were telling me the story, I engaged as well, and I was interested. And I was thinking about the fact that I was thinking about this project that I'm doing, and I was sort of reflecting on the fact that if I want to work with people that have dissociative identity disorder, if I want to work with people that have recovered memories or have been through sexual abuse or whatever, I'm going to be dealing with these stories. I'm going to be hearing, like, I was thinking about these people, and I was like, these are the exact people that I'm choosing to work with or choosing to sort of try to aid. And it's a good thing for me to learn to sort of navigate those triggers here and there. And I chose intentionally, I was like, no, I don't want to really run away from this trigger. Like, I kind of want to hear the conversation, particularly because it was interesting from a psychological perspective, or to hear from people in a mental health field about the people that they had sort of encountered. So I was like, I gotta sort of navigate that. And I actually felt really proud of myself, because I was wondering if I was gonna get really triggered, and I was kind of like, oh no, is that gonna impact my day? And then after the conversation was coming to a close, I was like, I ran to just sit in the sit in the bathroom for a second and just see how I felt. Like, am I triggered? Do I feel stressed out? And I think I was actually more triggered by the idea of getting triggered. And then I sat and I was like, I think I actually feel okay. I don't feel bad, and I felt proud of myself, and I felt good, and I felt like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna dedicate my life to, and I'm gonna run across this trigger, and it's gonna be there, and probably one day it won't be triggering. And it didn't happen to me, it happened to somebody else, and doesn't make it less. I think the difficult part, being someone with that lived experience and navigating stories of other people with that lived experience, is that you have such a window into the emotions that people feel in those situations. Like, it's not just like, oh whoa, that's crazy that happened, but like, you get this sort of visual of how that's going to manifest for somebody. And I think that that's sort of painful. But, like, for example, I was thinking later about the fact that, for example, I've never had like a really, really close friend pass away. I haven't dealt with too many deaths in my life, and or somebody be killed. I was seeing the other day a story about somebody who had a child who was killed, and it's like, that's really sad, but I can't really sort of obviously I know that it's sad, but I can't even imagine like the grief or the sort of emotions that would make you feel. And I think that's the power of having a lived experience, but also the difficulties. Like, you don't really get such a visual of what people are sort of facing, and that can be quite triggering, but also really useful. But also, in the same event that I was at with my coworkers, we were at a conference, and I was watching this older woman sort of give this speech, and I was feeling pretty inspired. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I was just imagining myself. I was like, maybe one day I'll be at a stage on a conference, I'll be giving my own speech. And I felt really empowered by the idea of being like an elder in my field. I don't think we see a lot of women who are sort of elders in their field, or like, oh, I've been here for a really long time, I really know what I'm talking about, and I'm here giving you this information. I think it was like, kind of, I was just really sitting with that and feeling excited that one day I'm going to be sort of an elder in my field, or I'll be in that place. And I was just imagining myself like giving a little speech. I was like, oh, one day. And I also have been thinking a lot recently. These are just all my reflections on like sort of my pre-career reflections, or hopefully this project will be done one day and then I'll be in like closer to this career that I really want to go into. But I was thinking a lot about how I really want to work with other women in my field. I was like, one day I want to have my own company, my own maybe research institution. I was like, it would be so cool to have a lot of women in power in my field, or even, for example, have a group of actual survivors doing research for survivors would be so cool, or something like that. And yeah, I've just been really getting sort of excited to be in my field and been yeah, reflecting on that and really like sort of hyped up. And I think that also gave me excitement to get older too. I've been having a little bit of a crisis, like I think our society makes us scared to age, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm obviously really young, but I think it's just I was just thinking about how these are like the years that people teach us are supposed to be, or like our beautiful years, and then we're like haggard and old. And I was like, oh my God, I'm working on science instead of going out and doing some other thing that is really beauty centric. And sometimes that makes me feel scared, but I think something that makes me feel excited to get older is to see other women who are older in their field. And one of the benefits of getting older that we offer to men is that one day you get to become an expert, you get to become an authority, you get to become a leader. And we don't sell that to women as much. That's like the exciting part of getting old, is that one day you are this, like, people hold you in high regard and you're an authority and all this stuff. And that's like the perk or the benefit of getting old. And that's always been sort of in different sort of cultural groups, that's always been like the perk of getting old, is now people really listen to you, people really, you're like the person that they turn to, you have like this power. And it's like, that's not really what we encourage in women. And I was like, yeah, it's cool, I get to look cute now, whatever, and look cute, but I'm gonna look cute my whole life. I'm saying, but I think that, like, yeah, I get to be cute and young and fun and all this stuff. And then I get to grow up and I get to be an authority and I get to be an expert and I get to be all these different things that are also really exciting. And that's really cool. So yeah, I think I've been doing a lot of like pre-career reflections, especially because finally my visa came in and I'm going to have a master's degree. I'm going to start my master's degree program on Monday. So yeah. Well, I forgot to say that the point of that rant was to be that I think that I've been a bit sort of getting over a little bit the trigger of just the content, or trigger of like sexual abuse content or information about abuse. But I think the thing that triggers me the most, and I felt that so much throughout this project, is the anger. Just the anger, the feeling of just hopelessness, frustration, and irritation towards the justice system and towards our society. It's, I think, like the bigger trigger, and it kind of like knocks the wind out of me and just makes me feel really frustrated. And it actually is like, I think that actually makes it more difficult for me to work than, for example, sometimes I've mentioned my own lived experience and like how I process my trauma. And I don't know, maybe there's different reasons for that, but I don't think that that actually sort of hampers me the way that the feeling of just anger and irritation, and honestly like a bit of fear too, just a bit of fear at like bringing up talking about this in a societal context. I think that that's like one of the big like triggers that I am like currently trying to work through, knowing that I'm going to be like in my field and just being like in my field with the story, in my field with this intention, and just being like, I want to chop away at that. And it makes me feel angry, because I feel angry that people, I feel angry at a science that has just completely discredited a mass group of people going through something so difficult. I feel angry that at people who had abusers who keep doing anything to sort of discredit the people they have abused, and the sort of world that accepts that as a an okay thing, or that supports that tendency and just supports people's narcissism, supports people's etc., and supports people's um abuse just in general. It really frustrates me, and it's something, I think that it's difficult because it's something so big. It's something that is you know, every, you can chip away at it and chip away at it, and it's just tough. It's, I mean, I felt really mad seeing that video, because I felt that I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I'll link below, I felt mad because I was seeing videos of men who are also sort of celebrating. I'm forgetting his name. The man, I'm sorry, the man who had shot Megan Thee Stallion. They were really like celebrating this sort of story that Megan Thee Stallion was sort of lying or something, which wasn't true. But I just feel really, it just makes me angry. It just frustrates me. The misogyny frustrates me. And also we have different traumas, but I was watching this video and a lot of people in the comments, they're commenting on how also how often this happens to Black women, that Black women don't really get their story sort of, I'm sure if whatever the trauma is for me as a white woman in the justice system, I think it's probably even worse for Black women who are trying to get their stories of rape across or whatever. And yeah, but I was just resonating with some of the sort of stories that were brought up in the justice system while they were dating. It's like, they were dating, does that make it okay to shoot someone in the foot? No. She was drunk. Okay, does that make it better? Like, no, obviously not. And it's just these little stories will say anything, and it's just, I think that's been my biggest trigger throughout this whole project, is that you can't control a society, and you can't control, I mean, all you can do is create safety precautions for people. And it's hard. I think that we need to do a lot of collective work, but I can't make people do the collective work. I can just protect people with the ways that I have. So that's, I think, been like the big trigger for me, that it's really hard to sort of overcome, because it's so prevalent, and it's like bigger than just, am I afraid of the world? It's like the world is like that, and that's really hard. I've been having a lot of cool ideas recently. Like I was thinking it'd be cool to have, for example, if I had like a research institution one day, it's my little ambitious dreams, like have a lot of the leadershipy women would be cool, because you don't usually see that. Or I was thinking, obviously, it would be cool to do some projects or some kind of initiatives that are survivor led, would be really cool as well. Get more survivor like voices in the story. And then I also thought it'd be really cool one day to have a lab that is run like almost entirely by people with lived experience, research assistants with lived experience, or research leads, that all of my research leads have some kind of lived experience, would be really cool. Knowing how powerful that lived experience has been for me would be so cool. Like all everybody, I don't know, something like that would be really, really cool, I think. And yeah, I've also been just like full of ideas and really excited. So I don't want to make it seem like it's all, it's obviously not all tough. I think it's also been a really hopeful and really empowering experience to be here right now, and doing this project has been incredible, and has given me such a sense of agency over that experience as well. And I think, for example, now it's gotten less triggering to hear sexual abuse stories, like I said, because, or any kind of abuse story, because now, instead of looking at it and being like, wow, the world is so painful and bad, I think, wow, this is a big group of people that I have the potential to really be of assistance to, and people can have a much easier time. People can have a smoother ride at things, and have more information, be armed with more sort of protection as well. And that's been really impactful for me, really empowering to think of a future like that. Particularly because I've also been full of ideas for future research that I want to do. Like I said, another video, I'm doing just plain encoding and consolidating right now. I could do one on reconsolidation. I already had that thought process. I've already had this idea for like a therapy type that I want to do. And let me show you really quick, just because all that deleted, and that was my hard work. If you haven't watched any previous videos of me, I've also alongside this been working on a therapy for dissociative amnesia based off my project and also my lived experience. What do I think would be useful? I've been reading work, like texts on reflections by clinicians, or research on what the experience of clinicians has been and what has actually been useful for people with dissociative disorders. So let me share just really quick. I'm not going to go into everything. I'm just going to link up here if you want to know a little bit more about what this has been. But I've just been I added a lot recently on sort of just more reflections based on my lived experience. What do I think this therapy should look like? I'd already fleshed out a lot of this, but basically based on my research that I'm doing now, if everything goes well, I want to know if scopolamine, which is a medication that people usually use in research projects to lower acetylcholine, which is usually not necessarily a good thing at all, because you want acetylcholine, but we don't usually interact with people that have overly high acetylcholine. But if that is a mechanism of trauma, it would be cool to see like if scopolamine would be a useful medication for people with that. And then I imagine that more in a therapy context, because you'd be having a lot of, if that's the case, your oppressed trauma will be coming up, so you don't want to do that by yourself or every day. So for example, this is research right here. Is scopolamine a good medication for people with dissociation? So that's like, look, this is like research paper 1, right? They're like stacked and ready to go, I'm telling you. Research paper 1 right here. Research paper 2, when is the best time to take the medication if it works? Would it be during a session where you're talking to somebody, or would it be at bedtime because you're about to enter a consolidation period? That's research project number 2 right there. And then research number 3 would be, for example, if this all works, whatever. I was thinking maybe in a therapy context, it would be good to do like a few weeks with the medication and then a few weeks just in therapy without. Is that a useful thing? So I have like a lot of research ready to go that I just would really like to do. We're manifesting it. I'm gonna have like a way to do it. We're gonna manifest that all together. But it's been really empowering to just sort of like as I'm going through, I'm just stacking all these different things that I want to do, and just like I just feel ready to like go. I just want to be in my my field. Let's see if I can figure it out. If I can finish this project, that's like a really good experience thing to put in my LinkedIn, my CV, or further down the line. Something else I've been thinking of because scopolamine is kind of an easy one just in my head because but it would take a lot of exploring, like for example how much is an appropriate amount where you don't lower it too much and people still are like good. You just want to sort of induce more consolidation windows by not having the arousal be too high all the time. But something I will add, last thing, because this is something that's been really just like hyping me up. I've been working on this like a lot, but is there like another way to sort of induce sharp wave ripples? That could be if there's some kind of technology for that, which I think there might be because I read a rat study on fear extinction recently, but I don't know how that would work exactly. But if there's some kind of, if anybody knows, if there's, I need to do that research. But if there's some kind of technology out already that induces sharp wave ripples, I don't know if that's too complex, but that's like a future thing. But I do think scopolamine is kind of like an easy target as like a starter. And then maybe you get more like, what's the word? More sophisticated later down the line, and then it's like maybe a little bit less stressful overall because maybe this is like too, I don't know, we'll see. Hopefully I will see at some point in time, but I think the more I'm building, the more I'm like, okay, I'm going somewhere. I don't know when, I don't know where, but I'm going somewhere with this, and like I just got to finish the project.
All right, I'm taking a brief break from my video that I'm watching. I'm like a little bit, I'm almost done with it, but it's just very information dense, and I want to kind of let it sit for just 2 seconds. This is everything I have so far. So I've just been taking notes on long-term potentiation, and then I have like these pictures, which is really helpful so far. But so I actually am meeting with somebody, like a connection that I made at my old research assistant job. It's somebody who is she has her PhD in neuroscience, I think, question mark, I think, yes. But I wanted to show her my project and see if she has any input or if she can connect me to someone who can. I want to have it like pretty much ready to go because I really want to publish this like this fall. If I can publish it this fall, I'll be really happy. And I don't want it to be like a super duper work in progress. I really, really want someone to just be able to look over my code pretty much. Who knows if that'll happen? I don't feel like I'm that far, but I keep thinking that I'm not that far and I keep being further away than I think that I am. But it would make me happy if I at least had this stuff set up before I saw her, so then it's not like this massive jump. I have a question that I'm gonna ask her when I see her. This is what I'm thinking for now, is that obviously I don't know how to build everything myself. That's like my one weak spot, is I don't know how to actually build a neural network. So I'm gonna basically, for now, I'm gonna see how much I can sort of borrow from the unified model of whatever study that I keep referencing in terms of the architecture and the plasticity rules, and add my own piece on top of it. Because like I said, they stopped theirs at about this spot. They have when as well, but I want the what. That's like my sort of addition, and I'm also adding my own sort of format, which is the rat study, the acetylcholine. So I have a lot of my own things that I'm adding. So it's not like I'm just sort of straight up ripping them off, but I do want to make sure that that's academically honest. And I'm gonna ask her when I see her. But my thinking is that if we're using the same rules and what they're doing is accurate, then why should I reinvent the wheel, or why should I sort of remake it if that's correct? You know what I'm saying? Like if they did it correctly, there really shouldn't be anything to change about their model. So, but I just thought my one big concern is that I want to know how to cite them, and like if I'm doing things appropriately is like my big question. So I'm gonna ask ChatGPT now, like what is the sort of thought process on that, and then who knows like what the answer will be on ChatGPT's end, and then I'm gonna ask her when I see her. But it would be nice because if I can at least borrow from them for now, and then later on she can, either she or somebody she knows hopefully can give me some advice on like how to do it or how to do everything properly, or is it proper already.
And then if there's something that I need to change on that end, that's fine. But as long as I can show her like that I already have the concept done, it's not like she's like the one to be like, oh, I'm gonna publish it or something. But I just that's the first person I'm showing it to, and I just want it to be sort of ready so it's not like, oh, this is just like randomness. Like I want it to be as smooth of a process as possible. I'm really curious how she's gonna react. I haven't shown like anybody this project at all. Like I showed one person in my life who's a psychiatrist, and she was kind of shocked. She was like, how did you do this?" And I was like, I don't. I've just been working at it like every day, but obviously she's not a neuroscientist nor is she a computational modeler. So I think she was just sort of like, oh, it's a like that's really cool, but it wasn't like she was like, like this is really off or something like but she gave me good advice. She told me to read about fear extinction. But yeah, I had read some about fear extinction, but I honestly think I might read more before the end of this because it is pretty important. Let's ask what is appropriate. This is my other challenge. I did not know how to build a, what's it called? Of this. Let's see if there's, we should also try to see if we can find a computational model of this. I feel a little bit better Frankensteining some things because I obviously don't know enough really to I don't know. I don't even know if this will be perfect at all because there's when it's like you start to overthink it to the point where it could go so many different places like for example, well maybe it should be bringing in like if I'm doing something that's stressful, bringing in some kind of stress, or maybe that's coming from a different place. Like there's just stuff like that where it's like, okay, but obviously I guess we're not going to really include that element, but I don't know. This is really complex. It's definitely not going to be done by the time I see her because it's definitely still going to be really messy. Because if it took me this long to get here, there's no way I'm finishing this in like, what, 5 days. But I also have class this week. I'm continuing with my job this week. Well, okay, this is perfect because there's a lot of different computational models in one. But okay, that's not what I was even really coming here for. But let's ask. I just want to know what's the standard? How would that go in like a standard science situation? Because that's just research, right? I mean, if it's already built. I asked, what's the ethics behind incorporating the plasticity rules and the sort of build of the junk study, which is already constructed, and then adding the pararhinal, I think, cortex on and my own ATH dynamics and etc. on top as long as I cite. Is it typical to reinvent the wheel with the model each time you make it, or do people ever borrow pieces of each other's rules and models? My question, I would imagine that people kind of borrow from each other because, first of all, that's just research, right? And then, second of all, if people already did like a piece, why would you have to remake it over and over and over again if it already exists? But I don't fully know. Maybe people usually write it themselves. I mean, obviously, like, well, we'll see. Okay, so it's normal and expected to build on existing models. Um, and then obviously cite the original source, state what I kept and changed. And that's at the, oh, okay, they borrowed rules too. Oh, yay. Okay, I'm not crazy. Oh my gosh, then I'm just going to use a lot of what they did. I'm going to obviously cite that. Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. So then, yeah, that's that. I think I asked some form of that question earlier, but I just wasn't fully sure because okay, that's really good then I can do that much faster. Okay, so apparently reinvention is not expected and often discourage it wastes effort and muddies comparisons. Just be transparent. Thank you, ChatGPT. That's not okay, then that really simplifies things. The only things that I have to add, I already made ACH. I already kind of laid out a framework for my it's still a really big uphill climb from here, like a uphill battle kind of situation because I need to add, what I'm gonna try to modify my study to be is I had, for example, the where, I had almost tagged the where as like in a cage or something, but I might just change that to being like places in a line. I think is just neater, cleaner. And then the where or the when will obviously have to also then do with the temporal coding stuff. And then what is going to be, it's going to be so much more simplified than what I actually did before because what I did before was a very abstracted version of what I'm about to do. Like that was like the first little, yeah, it was like a very abstracted version of what I'm going to do right now. But it was good because it helped me understand what I needed and it was a good way for me to experiment what I needed to do. And like, you know what I mean? It gave me that sense of like, okay, what are my struggles and etc. So it was actually, I think it was a good thing to do that really abstracted version first and to be like, okay, there's some stuff that's really not going right here. So that's cool. But I think what's already kind of good, though I might change it up, is the ACH dynamics are not too off, I think, in terms of how they operate. Like that sharp wave ripple gating thing should already that's already pretty accurate to how I'm pretty sure it should work. Like, okay, if it's at obviously like it just needs to be under a threshold. If it's hitting that threshold, it can start to consolidate. And that's it. That's really all that was. And that was not a hard thing to do. And that I think that one is already like kind of pretty good. But it's just that this binding, it's really the encoding that was having a big issue right now. This just started to feel kind of serious. Like, okay, yeah, I'm doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe do the rest of the video right now. I wanna, before I jump back in, I'm gonna add something to another document here that I actually read from Pinterest, or it was either Pinterest or LinkedIn. I think it was Pinterest, but I feel like I have another video that I did at the beginning of this project called channeling female rage into science. That I'll put it like up here. But that was right at the beginning of my project when I was just like, I'm gonna do this, and I didn't have that much information yet. Well, I feel like this has been sort of like the part two, but kind of fun because I feel like I've grown so much. I've grown so much as like through this journey. It's been incredible. Like I don't know. I've actually today I was really thinking that I should be really proud of myself because it has been a lot of hard work and yeah, hopefully I don't know. I've been really pulled by the idea that science is something that I mean, yeah, I feel like science is something you really can't take away. It's something lasting, something that people sort of almost like interweave into this network of information. I don't know quite how to put it, but there are a lot of other types of ideas that are very, I would say even more prone to censorship or easy to revoke. But science is one thing that I mean, it has definitely we've definitely seen our fair share of censorship of science recently. But if something is useful, it's useful, and it's something that you once the impact is there, it's really quite, I think it's much harder to sort of take away. You know, people see science as something neutral and or something apolitical, and it's not an apolitical thing at all. Science is also deeply political, and I feel like I found myself in a really deeply political sphere of science at the moment, and that's been pretty interesting. I spoke about that in that video, so channeling female rage into science or something like that, about how it's been a political journey too to do this project. It's not just been like a really sort of neutral science experiment. And actually, I don't think that there's anything neutral about any type of science at all. Because obviously, every bit of science that I've cited in my work has had really lasting impact in the lives of, is going to have, you know, it has a lasting impact on the lives of people that have been affected by so many different difficult circumstances. I think particularly the science of trauma is pretty political, strangely. And also I think there's a political aspect to how science gets done. Obviously, who gets to engage in science, who gets to do science. Science is most definitely not apolitical, and you know, I think that sometimes that's why it's a little bit less prone to censorship. Is that I think people see it as a very neutral thing, unless you're being really overtly political, unless you're overtly mentioning certain types of groups or some things. But I think that sometimes that it can be somewhat less prone to censorship than other sorts of methods of communication or methods of knowledge production. And I think that it's been cool to do this science and to feel like I'm slipping sort of slipping it in. It's like a little like, let me just slip it in right there. And it's obviously I'm not going to be necessarily talking about politics in my paper, but it has been a deeply political project for me. So I think that's been pretty interesting. Like I'm, you know, obviously I there's so much censorship right now in terms of the way that we navigate women's rights. Particularly in my country as an American, there's so much censorship towards science for women, uh, work for women, the freedom of women. And this has just been my way to sort of slip through the cracks as best as I can and to be like, well, I think particularly because I didn't get a grant for this, so I'm really slipping through the cracks. I didn't get a grant for this. I didn't have to ask for any money. I didn't have to get approval for anybody. I just did it, which has been kind of funny. And I think I've just been sort of like, let me sliver my way in there, and then it's out, and like nobody can really take that away, really for the most part. So yeah, I think that's been sort of my little. I've mentioned a few times. It's been very political. It's been like my little silent protest that I'm doing, but anyways, I found this on Pinterest. I'm going to talk about that more in a second, but I found this on Pinterest and I just thought it was great. So it says, I got my last five papers accepted without major revisions. Here's my method. So one, outline urgent impact, point to gaps, which I'm going to do a little bit with that fantasy model-y sort of what are the gaps in PTSD thing. Accentuate novelty and comparability. I should think about that. Replicable, simple methods. Explain findings visually. Widen perspective. Stimulate discussion and excite with potential. So these are the things I want to try to do as best as I can in my paper. I think this is really great advice. Obviously, I've never written an academic article that has gotten published, but I think this is great advice. So I'm going to try to stick to it as best as I can. Anyways, back to my comparison to my old video, but I think, yeah, this project has really grown me so much. It's been so validating. It's been so it's just been everything. It's probably the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I think this is the first thing in my life outside of just surviving my own difficult experiences and growing as a person. I think this has been the thing in my life that I've been the proudest of, and that's interlinked. I don't think I can even really sort of like, they're sort of like this, like I can't really separate the two. They're really the same thing. I think because I survived my experience, this has been an extension of I'm going to survive and I'm going to thrive. I'm trying to think of a quote. I can think of a few quotes actually. There's a few different people. I actually referenced Audre Lorde like twice in my other video, like in the comments and stuff. So we're gonna bring this one up. But caring for myself is not self-indulgence; it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. I was going to die sooner or later, whether or not I had even spoken myself. So I just love. I think that everybody. This is a pretty popular quote by Audre Lorde, but I really like that idea that I feel like also in another video where I spoke about uh, another political experience that I had with being a survivor, like in the description I basically said that the system for us to continue, like the system depends on us hating ourselves to continue. And I spoke in that video about how for me to navigate that experience and heal and still love myself, there was no way that I wouldn't speak out for myself or do something like this. Because if you love yourself, like if you really love yourself like that, then it just seems absolutely wrong for a situation like this to persist. And that's how I felt going through that experience. I was like, I love myself. I believe myself. Like I want to take care of myself. And in taking care of myself, it's going to expand into this project because if anybody else was having somebody, somebody I loved, if there was somebody trying to sort of imply they were crazy or a liar and I knew they were true, I would fight for them. So I have to fight for myself. Like if there's a society trying to call me a liar for something that I'm not lying about, trying to make me feel like, trying to bar me from my healing, trying to bar me from, because it doesn't seem on the surface like people are barring you or like sort of stopping you from reaching the kind of services and care that you need. But they are mentally, they are, because they're creating a sort of barrier to adequate mental health care. They're creating barriers to adequate care in the justice system, to actually, to getting people around you that believe you and speak out for you. And people are imposing a sort of mental blockage on others. And I think it's not something to be taken lightly. I think for people to, especially thinking as a survivor from even navigating a Title IX trial. And I think, for example, people like, I was talking about Megan Thee Stallion's case. I've spoken a lot about Christine Blasey Ford's case because these are really prominent cases, but there's a lot of different cases, of it's super prevalent, super prominent to tell people who are speaking out about their abuse that they sort of are either confabulating, they got it wrong. Well, it's because you did this and that. And those just because it's not coming from someone you love doesn't mean it's not going to hurt just as badly, doesn't mean that you're going to identify it with it just as badly, that's not going to hurt just as badly. And it's not, it's going to stop you from reaching out for that care that you need. It creates an energy of self-hate and the sort of mistrust of yourself. And in doing that, you stop people from reaching out for adequate mental health care. So it is a massive barrier to mental health care to impose that sort of narrative on people's abuse stories, and it's not a light thing. And I think that we need to approach the justice system with that in mind, and that those, the words that you speak in a justice setting, like they matter a lot, and the way that you navigate the stories of people who suffer from abuse, they matter. Like it's not just, I can't just, if somebody gets it wrong, or somebody speaks in a way that's insensitive, in a way that's not really very kind, or that isn't sort of well rooted in the way that you should navigate survivors of abuse. It's not just I'm going to go off and be like, well, they suck, I know I'm right. I mean, I did do that to a certain degree, but it's like I did that, and I also felt a lot of self-hate. I also doubted myself. I struggled more with my mental illness. I felt like I couldn't reach out to people for support. I felt hyper independent. All these different manifestations of somebody responding to my story that way. Like it's not just a thing of like, they'll get over it, or well, that's just how it goes in the justice system. But deep down that you can believe yourself, but we're just not going to believe you for this particular setting because, well, that's just how it is. Well, that's just the school system. It's like, no, those words hurt. They hurt deeply. That's a person telling you that you are a liar or trying to make up a story about you, and it's like, that's not true. And it's not a light thing at all. So I think that we really need to change the way that we navigate. But first of all, that's why I always love that quote. I think that's what spoke to me as a survivor. I was like, I feel like loving myself also meant navigating the world more politically, and it also meant learning to defend myself where I needed to defend myself. That's part of it too, because the system wants you to hate yourself. The systems that we create that protect certain individuals over others, we're made to learn to hate ourselves. I think in every one of those systems, for example, the patriarchy wants women to hate themselves. White supremacy wants non-white people to hate themselves, and they want those people to feel shame. They want those people to feel lesser than, because then you don't fight that system. You get depleted, you feel tired, you think, well, it's easier to hate yourself to navigate, it's easier to hate yourself to survive. And loving yourself, it's like horribly painful. It's actually really painful to love yourself and to have that kind of injustice thrown your way, because if you love yourself, you just see how wrong it is. Like you just feel twice as much how wrong it is, because it's like somebody's doing something to somebody you love, and like you have to put in that extra effort and that extra care to validate yourself, to love yourself. It's a really hard thing. Like it is really tough. And yeah. And then there's actually a sort of similar quote by someone who I actually had a dream about last night, funny, which is kind of funny. I had a dream that I met her. Well, I'll tell you the dream in a second. Yes, Mitski. I love Mitski. I've been listening to Mitski since like 2015. I've seen her like twice in concert. I love Mitski. I had a dream last night that I actually met her, and she was wearing these sunglasses, and I was in her music video. So I think she just like subconsciously, she came to mind today. So she said, I used to rebel by destroying myself, but realize that's awfully convenient to the world. For some of us, our best revolt is self-preservation. And I love that quote. And it's so true, especially for me, like after this situation, I struggled so much with like self-harm and all these things. And this quote really spoke to me a lot. And I think that speaks the exact same idea that the world makes it really difficult to love ourselves. Particularly if you're part of a marginalized group, you are taught to hate yourself, because if you hate yourself, you don't see any reason to fight any kind of system. And yeah, I think that self-love is just so powerful in that context. And yeah, I don't know, just thoughts today, because I feel like this video is kind of paralleling that video that I made before, and I was thinking about it today. And I just feel like I keep channeling my anger into something so useful and productive. And it's just been really inspiring to see it grow. And I think I need to also learn to give myself that credit more and be like, I cannot believe that you did this. And like, thank you for the hard work. I've been really telling myself I need to thank myself more for my own hard work, because I did this for people who struggled with this, but really I kind of did it for me. Like I was like, you deserve better. You deserve so much more. You deserve people to listen to you. You deserve to be heard. You deserve adequate mental health care. You deserve like all of that. And it's like I feel like I did it for me too. And it's I almost feel like I had to be my own older sister, like my own parent through the process of like, I'm gonna fight for you, I'm gonna defend you, I'm gonna take care of you. Like I'm not gonna let you go through this pain, and that's not okay with me. So yeah, I don't know. But it's been powerful for me. I've really been like happy that I've gotten to this point. But yes, I did dream about Mitski last night.
All right, so that's basically it. I just finished this video.
Now that I can just borrow all of those pieces of that one model, I'm gonna borrow like all of that. So I'm not gonna make it again. And then I'm gonna essentially this is gonna be such a hassle because it took such a hassle to get ChatGPT to do everything in the first place. But hopefully this is all written. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have ChatGPT take everything that they did. I'm gonna run what they already did on Nango. I think that's gonna be my first challenge. Is how do I get what they did onto my Nango? Because that's probably going to be a shift anyways. I don't think that they use Nango. Let's ask. Obviously I know they didn't really, but I don't know what program they used. But I know that they used spike timing dependent plasticity rules in theirs. And the thing about Nango is that it has like the framework to use the same rules because Nango is sort of made to have the capacity to learn like a hippocampus, which is why I chose it in the first place. So yeah, it shouldn't be a big thing to switch it over. If that makes sense, I just need to make sure there's probably some things that might be like a little bit different, or I just need to make sure that everything's okay on that end. Those are things that I'm gonna try to get this sort of set up so that I can show the person that I'm gonna see next week, or actually in 4 days. It's this week. Oh my God, in like 4 days. Okay, well, we're really gonna work hard the next few days then. I just want to have it sort of like basic framework ready, and then I might be able to at the very least, show her like a few of my different runs that I had, like my old ones, if this isn't fully done. And maybe she'll have some suggestions for me in terms of like, I don't know, compatibility. I have no idea. I don't even know what this conversation is gonna go like at all. Like I have zero sense of what this is gonna go like. But this is my first time getting it in front of a neuroscience-esque person. They use something called Nest. Let's ask if I'm using Nengo. Should I switch it or is that or no? Because I could switch for the rest, but I don't know. I'm a little bit attached to Nengo now. But Nengo also uses spike. You can also make spiking neural network. I've been so lazy to edit recently. I should be editing my Artist Way video this week, but I wasn't that into it, even though now it's kind of weirdly aligned with this like the theme of this week because it got like randomly political because it was talking about leadership and my predictions and all this stuff. I don't know. I didn't really feel that happy with it just because it wasn't like that cute. Like I wasn't really doing that much cute stuff this week, but I did some stuff. It was like a lot of talking, but now I'm committed, it's like now I've committed. I have to do it the 12 weeks, obviously. So I have to edit it. But it's done. It's just I ran late too because I had my conference this week. I can say Nango if my goal is cognitive slash algorithmic modeling of binding, tagging, and replay statistics. If I need biophysically realistic sharp wave ripples, Nest is the better fit. So if I want, this is getting really complex now. I feel like I keep hitting my wall in terms of complexity, and I'm like, this is the end of the line for me. And then I kind of muster up my energy. I'm like, no, we'll do it. But I'm a bit nervous. Like it just feels really big. This whole thing that it's saying might be the reason that I was struggling to get enough sharp wave ripples in Nango. I might end up switching to Nest. I can also do a hybrid split. It's a little bit random. I don't know if I want to do all that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to be like, I kind of want both things. Like, I don't want to do like one or the other. So either it said that Nango is good for the whole binding ACH story situation. but Nest is good for ripple accurate sharp wave ripple physiology. I don't know. See, these are the complex questions that I will have to ask this coming week, but I'm just gonna do the best that I can for now. I guess I'll stick to Nango, and maybe we should let's like get some notes together. I don't know. I should ask, but I'm a bit shy. I'm gonna see this person in 4 days, like I said. I don't know, like, what does she know about this? Maybe she knows a lot. Maybe she doesn't know anything. I don't even really know, but we'll see in a few days. Let's copy paste this we're gonna ask her, we're gonna ask her questions. And this is one of the questions that I don't know if she'll know herself how to answer, or if maybe she knows somebody who can answer it for me. Again, I don't fully know. Like, we've spoken very briefly. I didn't even know when I met her that she was a neuroscience person. I thought because I met her through my research study that was not neuroscience at all. It was like psychology stuff. But then I asked her to meet again. This is why you should always just randomly ask people to meet. And we had a conversation, and I found out that she's got gotten her PhD in neuroscience, and she's also working with people that are what like psychopathology, I guess, is her thing, which is why we even met in the first place. But it's kind of funny because when we had that meeting, the first time I had that meeting with her, I didn't fully know. I was trying to figure out how I was going to do something like this. We actually had a conversation about other ideas that I had. Um, and I was like, I don't know, how am I going to get to the point where I can find this thing? Because by then I hadn't even gotten into my master's degree program yet, but I had applied, and I had tried to apply for a neuroscience program, and I'd gotten rejected, of course, because I didn't have the experience. I just thought, it doesn't hurt. Like, why not? If I can make a strong case for like I've lived experience, I really want to make a bridge to this. But obviously I got rejected, which is to be expected. But I was like, how am I gonna do something like this? At that point, I was really sort of confused and uncertain, and like, how do I get there from where I am? And then we met, and I didn't know she was neuroscience anything. And then we started talking, and I found out that she was, and that really I was shaken. I was like, what? That's crazy. Which isn't that crazy in hindsight, but I was like, oh, it felt like a sign, weirdly. I was like, that gave me like this glimmer. I was really excited when I left the conversation. Like, I felt really happy. And I was like, I feel like it's a sign. This was quite a while ago now. This is maybe like 5, 6 months ago. I don't know. But yeah, she was just really listening. And I feel like she was really receptive to like what I was talking about. And it didn't sound well, because I had explained something else to her. Like, I had explained some other thing about sharp-wave ripples. And I was already thinking about sharp-wave ripples. And she was like, I know somebody who's working in dissociation stuff. Maybe you'd want to talk to them, but that never really happened. Like, they never. I mean, she tried to make the connection for me, and it just they were busy at that point and stuff like that. I never got to speak to these people, but um, in the meantime, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this project. Like, I didn't tell her. I was just in my head. I was like, I'm gonna do this project, and the fact that she was like a neuroscience person, I was like, oh, it just felt like such a strong sign because I'd really been wanting to do that. And yeah, I don't know. I just got kind of hyped up, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And then maybe like really soon after, that's when I figured out all this stuff. Like, oh, I can do like a computational model and all this stuff, like, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of funny because like now last time I spoke to her was maybe 6 months ago, I had nothing. Like, I had an idea. I'd already read about sharp wave ripples, and I thought probably this. Now I'm gonna talk to her again. It's like now I have this random out of the blue project. So I don't really know how this conversation is gonna go at all. Like, I have zero idea. So I'm really curious to know how this will go. I just hope that she maybe can look at my code if she knows how to do that, or if she knows somebody. That's like my big thing, is that I really want to make sure that's like publishable, and then we'll see how it goes. But feeling really grateful, and also grateful to have met met a woman in neuroscience, because I don't think I would have had the guts to go speak to a guy in my field. Maybe if they were like really nice, but I think I felt I felt more confident talking about my ideas because I feel like sometimes I feel like when it comes to men, I already have the like assumption or like the idea that maybe they're gonna be a little bit like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know about that or something. So I think I just felt a little bit more comfortable in the first place, like talking to her, asking her about stuff back then, and then it's like now it's nice because I feel like she's not gonna be like, you know, like I just it's so nice to have like other women in your field as well, and or like not women in your field. I'm not a neuroscientist yet, but you know what I mean? Like I feel like I've run into a lot of different women in like psychology and etc. And it's really nice to have colleagues or people that you work with that are also women. It just like I feel like you can flesh yourself out a little better sometimes, or there's not that like anxiety about whether somebody's really gonna be listening or whatever. So we're gonna put this here. I like how when I make these videos, like my looks slowly deteriorate throughout the video, and so I'm like, my hair is crazy. Like I'm in like really bad lighting and stuff. Like I always started out like, oh, I'm gonna look cute, and then by the end of the video, I'm like, I've just been working for hours and hours. But because yeah, it's like 2 in the morning, and I think I started working. I don't know, maybe 9. It's not that long, but yeah. All right, good night. This was an interesting video. I didn't expect to go in this direction, but hopefully you gain something from it. You know, loving yourself is revolutionary. Um, we need more women in science. Science is political, etc., etc. What I'll keep saying. All right, bye.